So, there's a mailbox in the Mojave Desert. Not near a house, not on a street, not at the end of a driveway, just a mailbox. Metal. Standard issue. The kind you'd see in front of any house in any suburb in America. Except this one is in the middle of the desert, miles from the nearest building, standing on a wooden post like it's waiting for a mailman who's never going to come. And people leave letters in it. They've been leaving letters in it for decades. Handwritten notes, postcards, photographs, drawings, little trinkets. Some of them are addressed to nobody. Some are addressed to the desert. Some are addressed to specific people who the writers know will never read them. And some are just confessions, written by strangers and left in a metal box in the middle of nowhere because they didn't know where else to put them. I've been going back and forth on whether to talk about this one because the information on it is scattered, and some of it contradicts itself, but I think there's enough here to tell the story, or at least the pieces of it that I've been able to put together. Here's what I know. The mailbox sits off an unnamed dirt road in the eastern Mojave, somewhere in the stretch between Baker and the Nevada border. I'm being vague on the exact location on purpose, and I'll explain why later. The area is managed by the BLM. It's open desert. No structures, no utilities, no water. Just creosote and dust and sky. The mailbox itself is old, not ancient, but old. The post is weathered and leans slightly to the south, which is what happens when the prevailing winds push on something for enough years. The metal box is dented in a few places, and the original color is hard to determine because the sun has bleached it to a kind of gray-brown that everything in the desert eventually becomes. The flag is up, which is either a detail that someone maintains or just the position it got stuck in years ago. Now, the first question is obviously who put it there and when, and the honest answer is I don't know for certain. Nobody does, as far as I can tell. The earliest reference I found to the mailbox is from a 1987 issue of a small off-roading newsletter that used to circulate in the Barstow area. It's mentioned in passing, in a paragraph about landmarks along a particular off-road route. The writer refers to it as the mailbox at mile 14, and doesn't explain it any further, which suggests it was already a known thing by that point. If it was new or unusual, you'd expect them to say more about it. So the mailbox was there before 1987. How long before? I can't say. But based on the condition of the post and the type of mailbox, which is a style that was common in the 1960s and 70s, my best guess is that it was installed sometime in the mid to late 1970s, maybe earlier. The most common story about its origin, and this is the one I've heard from multiple people who've been going out to that part of the desert for years, is that a miner put it there. The story goes that there was a small mining operation in the area, one of those one-man or two-man operations where a guy with more stubbornness than sense is pulling mineral samples out of a hole in the ground and hoping something will assay high enough to be worth the trouble. According to this version of the story, the miner put the mailbox at the junction of two dirt roads as a message drop. He was out there alone most of the time, and if someone needed to get word to him, or if a supply driver was looking for him, they could leave a note in the mailbox. It was a practical solution to a practical problem. No cell phones in the 1970s, no radio unless you had a base station. If you wanted to communicate with someone in the desert, you left a note somewhere they'd find it. That kind of thing was actually more common than you'd think. Before cell phones, before even CB radios were widespread, desert miners and ranchers had to get creative with communication. There are stories all over the Mojave of people using cairns, painted rocks, flags on poles, tin cans on fence posts. Anything that could hold a message or signal a presence. The mailbox was just a more civilized version of that. The area where the mailbox sits was actually mined on and off for decades. Small claims mostly. Bentonite, some copper, a little bit of talc. Nothing that made anyone rich, but enough to keep a few stubborn men digging holes out there through the 60s and 70s. Most of those claims are long since lapsed. The mine shafts are caved in or sealed. The only evidence that anyone was ever out there is the occasional pile of tailings and a few rusted cans. And a mailbox. The mining operation didn't last. They rarely do out there. The miner either moved on or gave up, and the mailbox stayed. And at some point, People started using it for something else entirely. The off-roaders found it first. The eastern Mojave has been popular with off-road enthusiasts since the 1960s. People on dirt bikes, in jeeps, in trucks, running the desert routes for fun. When you're on a long desert ride and you come across a mailbox in the middle of nowhere, you stop. You open it. That's human nature. You have to know what's inside. And at some point, someone left a note. Not a practical message, not directions or coordinates. Just a note. Something personal. Maybe their name and the date and a sentence or two about being out there, like the rock names in the Valley of the Names, but more intimate, more private. And then other people started doing the same thing. It became a tradition. You stop at the mailbox, you read what's inside, and you leave something of your own, a note, a letter, a photograph, whatever you've got. Over the years, the contents got more and more interesting. I've talked to a few people who visited the mailbox at different times, and the things they describe finding inside are remarkable. One guy told me he opened it in the early 2000s and found a letter from a woman in Oregon who had driven out there specifically to leave a letter for her late husband. She wrote that he had always wanted to see the desert but never made it, and she was leaving the letter there because it was the most remote, quiet place she could find. She wanted his words to be somewhere peaceful. Another person told me they found a sealed envelope addressed to whoever finds this that contained a handwritten apology. No names, no context, just someone saying they were sorry for something and that they needed to say it out loud, even if the only audience was a metal box in the desert. There are lighter things too. Jokes, drawings, business cards. Someone left a Polaroid photo of their dog. Someone left a mini bottle of whiskey with a note that said, "You look like you need this." There was apparently a period in the early 2010s when someone was leaving small hand-carved wooden figures in the mailbox, a different one each time. A coyote, a roadrunner, a tortoise. Nobody knows who was making them. I heard about one letter that was written in German. Nobody who found it could read it, so it just stayed in the box for months until someone who spoke German happened to open it and translated it for a forum post. Apparently, it was from a couple in Munich who were on a road trip across America, and the mailbox was on their list of places to visit. They wrote about how the desert reminded them of the emptiness they felt after the Berlin Wall came down, how the landscape looked like starting over. There was also apparently a marriage proposal in there at some point. A guy left a letter addressed to his girlfriend asking her to marry him, and then brought her out to the mailbox to find it. According to the story, she said yes. I have no way to verify that, but I want to believe it's true. The thing that fascinates me is the range. You've got someone leaving a bottle of whiskey as a joke sitting next to a letter from a grieving widow. Lighthearted and devastating, side by side in the same metal box. The mailbox doesn't filter. It doesn't judge. It just holds whatever people put in it. What strikes me about all of this is how different it is from the Mojave phone booth. The phone booth was about connection, about calling a stranger and hearing a voice. It was social. It was interactive. The mailbox is the opposite. It's about leaving something behind, putting words or objects into a box that you know might not be opened for weeks or months. There's no immediate response, no conversation, just a one-way act of expression directed at nobody in particular. And I think that's why people keep doing it. There's something about the desert that makes people want to confess. The emptiness does something to you. When you're standing out there, miles from anyone, with nothing but flat ground and sky in every direction, the normal rules feel suspended. The things you carry around in your head every day, the regrets, the secrets, the things you wish you'd said, they feel lighter out there, like the desert can hold them for you. The mailbox gives that feeling a physical form. You write it down, you put it in the box, you close it, and you drive away. And whatever you left in there stays in the desert. Now, here's why I'm being vague about the location. Over the last few years, as more people have found out about the mailbox, there's been a shift. It's gone from being an obscure desert oddity known to a few off-roaders to being something that people seek out specifically. Social media has done what social media does. People post photos of it. They share coordinates. They make TikToks about driving out to find it. And with that attention has come problems. More traffic on fragile desert roads. More trash left in the area. People taking things from the mailbox instead of leaving things. Someone apparently knocked it over at some point and it had to be set back up. The usual story of a quiet place getting loved to death. I don't want to contribute to that. The mailbox isn't on any protected land. The BLM doesn't have a management plan for it. It's not an official landmark or a designated site. It's just a mailbox on a post. And if too many people show up, one of two things will happen. Either the BLM will remove it the way Pacific Bell removed the phone booth, or it'll just get destroyed by the volume of visitors. So I'll tell you the general area. Eastern Mojave, between Baker and the Nevada state line, off a dirt road that requires high clearance. If that's enough information for you to find it, then you're probably the kind of person who knows how to treat the desert with respect. And if it's not enough, then maybe it's better that way. There's one more thing I want to mention about the mailbox, and this is the detail that got me thinking about it in the first place. Someone maintains it. Not officially, not on any schedule, but every once in a while someone goes out there and clears out the older contents, writes the post if it's leaning too much, maybe tightens a screw or replaces the flag. Nobody knows who. Nobody has ever claimed responsibility for maintaining it. It just stays there, functional, year after year, in a place where the sun and wind destroy everything. Whoever is doing it doesn't leave a name, doesn't take credit. They just keep the mailbox standing and the door closing and the flag working. And they've apparently been doing it for years. I find that more interesting than the mailbox itself, honestly. The mailbox is a curiosity, a fun desert story. But the fact that someone quietly drives out into the desert on a regular basis to take care of a mailbox that isn't theirs, that doesn't serve any official purpose, that most people don't know exists, that says something about how people relate to the desert. People form attachments to places out here, specific spots, a particular wash, a certain rock formation, a view from a ridge, and they take care of those places, quietly, without being asked. Not because anyone told them to, not because they'll get credit, just because the place matters to them. I think that's what the mailbox really is. Not a landmark, not a tourist attraction, not a social media spot. It's a place that matters to someone, maybe to a lot of someone's, and they take care of it the way you take care of anything you love, without making a big deal about it. The desert is full of things like that, places that matter to someone for reasons that are entirely personal and entirely invisible to the rest of the world. You drive past them at 70 miles an hour on the interstate, and you see nothing but empty land. But to someone, that particular patch of empty land is the most important place on Earth. The mailbox just happens to be one of those places that's visible. Most of them aren't. If you've ever visited the mailbox, or if you've left something in it, I'd be curious to hear what you left and why. And if you know who maintains it, well, maybe keep that to yourself. Some things are better left as mysteries. Thanks for listening.